In this particular section, we're going to be talking about Git workflows. This is the last section of our course on Git. So what are we going to learn? We're going to talk about various workflows. In previous discussions we've had in this series, we've talked about a basic workflow, your master, your develop, your feature. In this particular section, we're going to focus on that basic workflow, but then we're going to focus on forking workflow when you fork, a feature workflow, which is basically what that is. It's a basic workflow plus the feature branch. An open source workflow when you're doing an open source project, and lastly, the Git flow workflow. Okay, that's a little different than the rest. So what I want you to do is just sit back, join us, and we're going to walk through talking about all these different workflows that you can work with. And we're going to start off with talking about the basic Git workflow. So what are you going to learn? Well, we're going to talk about understanding what the basic Git flow is and how would you apply that basic Git flow in your day-to-day work. So understanding the basic Git workflow is, first thing, it's a central repository. So again, you may be working with a team of people, small teams. Again, we use the basic Git flow for small teams, maybe 2 or 3 people. Nothing really large. If going to more than that, we want to look at some other different workflow that we're going to talk about. But understand it's a single point of entry for everybody in a central repository. And the default development branch is called master. So in the previous sections, we were talking about a feature branch and a develop branch and master branch. And in the basic Git workflow, master is it. You create the repository and you just check code into that particular branch because it's automatically created when you create the repo. And it doesn't require any other branches besides master. So we're not going to branch for this feature or that feature. We're just going to do the work local. So every developer gets the whole database local, the whole repository local to their machine. Then they do their work. They check in, they do commits, they do pushes, they do all the work they're doing in their particular environment. At some point, they have to push it back to the central repository. Okay, and that's when, again, timing is everything on that. We don't want to wait too long. My idea of a basic Git workflow, because of the fact that everybody's working off the same branch, we want to check it in as early and often. So as long as we're getting done with a particular task that's associated with the work I'm doing. So I got maybe a couple of tasks for the day. Ever finished a task, I should push that into the central repository. I shouldn't wait till the end of the day or the next day when all the tasks are finished. I should actually push in as I'm going along. And again, also pulling out as you're going along too, because you want to make sure you're getting all the changes that anybody else has maybe checked in or committed. So you commit as you go, early and often. Don't worry about it. And the only thing that you're going to run into with this particular type of workflow is the fact that there could be merge conflicts. Again, because you have people coming in, and people are trying to, or just any kind of conflict for that matter, people are trying to push their code into the shared repository, and you may be working on the same code files that this other person's working on. The first one in wins, and then the second person has to deal with conflicts that are going to arise. And that means that people have to get together and talk about what is right to be checked in or committed here. User 2's code going to go as the head, or is user 1's code going to go as the head? So again, it's something to look out for as conflicts when you're working in a single branch repository. So how does that look? Well, first off, someone initializes the central repo. So somebody set up the account, and usually a team member, and they initialized, they did a git init, and they centralized the repository. Then everybody gets on and clones the repository. And it doesn't matter if you're using GitHub and through the web interface or a Git client or the command line. Everybody needs to clone the repo. Then, for example, we're going to talk about developer John. John works on his feature. Not to be confused with a feature branch. He's actually working on feature in the master branch. And Mary's working on her feature, again, in the master branch. Now, they're working local, so they're not affecting each other at this time. John, though, has to publish his feature, so he pushes his feature into the central repository. Mary is going to try and do the same thing now and publish her feature. And again, we're going to end up having to see some issues coming up here. I think you can see them, that we're going to run into some conflicts. And Mary basically rebased on top of John's commit, or the commits that he's pushed in up until that time. So Mary has to resolve the merge conflicts. So again, you're going to definitely see some conflicts coming up as you're working through the single branch mentality here. And then Mary successfully publishes her feature once she resolves the conflicts. Conflict resolution may be that, it's not just one person resolving the conflicts. In this simple example, we have two people. But if let's say you have a team of 3 or 4, at the most 4, hopefully using this basic workflow, you would actually have to get together with that individual and again go over everything to make sure what's being committed is the right code. So that's basic Git workflow, that is. And again, it's basically just a git, a init, and you create a single branch and you just all work from that particular branch. So what did we learn in this particular talk? Well, we learned about understanding the basic Git workflow, and then how do you would go about applying that to your day-to-day work. In our scenario that we're applying it to is fairly simple, but again, this is a basic workflow. It's a single branch workflow, and you want to make sure that you're not using it for teams that are quite large. So it is more for the simple team, a small team, 1 or 2, 3 people, maybe even 4 if you like, but I wouldn't go any farther than that with a basic workflow.